The main function of the circulatory system is to transport the needed materials to the cells and waste materials from the cells. The circulatory system has three main parts: the vascular system or the blood vessels, the blood, and the heart. Another part of the circulatory system is the blood. Blood is the circulating fluid that supplies the needed materials such as oxygen and digested food to all body cells and collect waste materials such as carbon dioxide and metabolic waste products from them. The blood is composed of solid parts, the blood cells, and the liquid part, the plasma. Actually, the whole blood, or 45% of the whole blood, is composed of blood cells such as red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, while the remaining 55% of the whole blood is composed of blood plasma, which consists of water, proteins, and other substances. Red blood cells in mammals have a biconcave shape. They do not contain nucleus, they are unable to repair themselves, and thus have a rather short life. They live for about 120 days and they are destroyed mostly in the spleen and in the liver. Hemoglobin in red blood cells gives a red color to the blood. Red blood cells are called erythrocytes, from the word erythros, which means red, and cyte, meaning cell. They are best adapted for carrying oxygen to the body cells. Red blood cells are made in the bone marrow of flat bones and of long bones. Blood cells, including the red blood cells, white blood cells, and blood platelets, are formed from special connective tissue cells referred to as hemocytoblasts. White blood cells are generally larger but fewer than red blood cells. 1 milliliter contains 5,000 to 10,000 white blood cells. There are two groups of white blood cells: those with granules such as neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil, and those without granules such as lymphocyte and phagocyte. They differ in one another in the shape of their nuclei and their staining properties. The phagocyte cell membrane is so flexible that it can squeeze between the cells, forming the wall of capillary. Whenever there is infection in the body, some of them leave the bloodstream and go to the sites of infection such as skin sore or wound. Lymphocytes, on the other hand, produces certain proteins known as antibodies which act against foreign substances. They are made in the lymph nodes. They live for about 4 hours to 10 days. Next is the platelet. Blood platelets are not cells. They do not have nuclei. They are fragments from a large cells or the megakaryocytes in the bone marrow. They live for 3 to 5 days and they play an important part in the clotting of blood. 1 milliliter of blood contains about 250,000 blood platelets. Clotting. For a small and shallow wound, a red mass forms over the wound. This is what we call a clot. After a few hours, the clotted blood shrinks, squeezing out a thin fluid called serum. The clot hardens and seals the wound. Among the substances in the blood, the following help in the clotting of blood. So we have what we call blood proteins such as the fibrinogen, thromboplastin, and prothrombin, and calcium ions which are also known as the inorganic salt. So paano nga ba nagkakaroon ng blood clotting? So ganito yung proseso niya. Injured or dying cells or destroyed blood platelets release a certain enzyme. In the presence of that enzyme, the blood protein thromboplastin is formed. In the presence of thromboplastin and calcium ions, the blood protein prothrombin becomes thrombin. In the presence of thrombin, the blood protein fibrinogen is converted into an insoluble protein called fibrin. Fibrin forms a soft network in which the red blood cells and plasma get entangled. The resulting jelly-like red mass is what we call clot. How about blood types? Karl Landsteiner discovered two kinds of substances in the blood. They are called antigens and antibodies. The antigens are referred to simply as A and B. Their corresponding antibodies are referred to as anti-A and anti-B. The antigens are found in the red blood cells while the antibodies are dissolved in the serum. People are grouped into four classifications according to the presence, absence, or combination of these antigens and antibodies. If a person has a blood type A, the antigen in the red blood cells is A, and the antibody in the serum is B. For blood type B, the antigen in the red blood cells is B, and the antibody in the serum is A. For a blood type AB, the antigen in the red blood cells is A and B, but the antibody in the serum is neither A nor B. And for the blood type O, the antigen in the red blood cells is neither A nor B, and the antibody in the serum is A and B. Each blood type also contains an antibody against the antigen that is absent in the blood. A person cannot have the antibody against his or her own antigen. If he or she has, it will result in the clumping of the red blood cells. The clumps of the red blood cells will clog the capillaries and cause death. It has been estimated that it is about 1/13 of the body weight, the amount of blood a person carries. This volume must be maintained for two reasons. First, it is important maintaining the amount of tissue fluid, and second, it is important in maintaining normal blood pressure. Excessive loss of blood is fatal to a person. In case of excessive loss of blood, the person must be given blood transfusion. However, the donor's blood type must be compatible with that of the recipient to prevent clumping of the red blood cells. Tissue fluids are formed when the blood passes through the capillaries. Water and dissolved substances such as oxygen, amino acids, simple sugars, and others filter through the capillary wall. Two things happen to the tissue fluid. Some of it enters the capillaries, some of it enters a system of vessels called lymph vessels. Inside these vessels is the pale fluid surrounds the tissue of an organism, which maintain fluid balance and removes bacteria from tissues, and they are known as lymph. The very fine lymph vessels are comparable to capillaries. They lead to a large lymph vessels which are comparable to veins. The larger lymph vessels in turn lead to two larger ducts. The right lymphatic duct, which receives lymph from the head and the right arm, and the left lymphatic duct or thoracic duct, which receives lymph from all other parts of the body. The two lymphatic ducts are joined to the large veins at the region of the shoulders below the neck. The ducts empty the lymph into the bloodstream at this region, where the lymph becomes part of the blood again. From there, the blood, which has received the lymph, enters the right atrium of the heart. Lymph nodes are enlargements located along the lymph vessels. In the lymph nodes, foreign materials like bacteria are removed. White blood cells in these nodes engulf the bacteria.